Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the plain form. Now, the plain form is used in both writing and in speech, but although it's used in speech, this is not a politeness level. Whether the plain form sounds polite or not depends completely on how it's used. Typically, the word plain form is used to refer to one grammar form used to make statements, not questions, commands, or suggestions. Let's review how to conjugate the plain form and then learn how it's used. The plain form conjugates differently depending on the type of verb. For action verbs, you'll get the verb stem and then, if it ends in a vowel, you'll attach a nian followed by ta, or if it ends in a consonant, you'll attach 는다. If the action verb stem ends with lir, remove that first. For example, 하다 becomes 한다. 먹다 becomes 먹는다, and 살다 becomes 산다. For descriptive verbs, however, you get the verb stem and attach 다. So this looks the same as the dictionary form. For example, 귀엽다 becomes 귀엽다, and 멀다 becomes 멀다. Note that the plain form itself is not directed at anyone in particular, and it can be used in both speaking and in writing. The plain form is simply a form used to say things without a specific intended audience. On its own, it's neither polite or rude, nor formal or informal. It is plain. And how the plain form sounds will depend on how it's used. First of all, when you're using the plain form, use 나 instead of 저 to say I or me. For example, use 나는 했다 and not 저는 했다. First, let's talk about how the plain form is used in writing. When you're writing it, the plain form is commonly used in these situations: when writing a journal or a diary, when writing an essay, a news article, or in example sentences. It would be incorrect and awkward to write a journal or diary for yourself, an essay for a class, or writing a general news article using any form other than the plain form. This is because journals, essays, and articles are not directed at anyone in particular. An exception would be an article written as a speech, specifically toward the reader. In addition, example sentences often use the plain form whenever the speech level is not important to the sentence. This is especially common in language books when teaching grammar. And the plain form is also used in speech. Now, when it's used in speech, it's most commonly used for making quotes, so the quoting form, or if you're making a casual announcement, or when talking out loud to yourself. The one we'll focus on in this lesson is making casual announcements. And we'll learn more about talking out loud to yourself in a later lesson. When used in speech, the plain form can sound like you're making a casual announcement. For example, imagine that you're holding a megaphone and saying something out loud for anyone, but not anyone in particular, to hear. Although this is not directed at anyone specifically, this usage is also considered to be casual, so it should only be used when speaking casually. Here are a few examples. 나 간다, I'm leaving. 관심 없다, not interested. 아, 너무 바쁘다. I'm so busy. And in the past tense, the plain form will be the same for any type of verb. Simply conjugate it to the past tense, get the stem as regular, and attach 다. For example, 하다 can become 했어요, and its stem is this, so it becomes 했다. 먹다 can become 먹었어요, so it would become 먹었다. And 가다 can become 갔어요, so this would become 갔다. You can also make the future tense using the 것이다 form as 거다, or the 겠다 form as 겠다. So here's how that works. You'll take a verb stem and attach either a lir or 을 as usual, followed by 거다. Or you can take a verb stem and attach 겠다. For example, 하다 can become 할 거다, or 하겠다. And 먹다 can become 먹을 거다, or 먹겠다. And 가다 can become 갈 거다, or 가겠다. Since 거다 comes from 것 plus 이다, you may also see 것이다 as is. For example, 하다 could also become 할 것이다. Okay, so I have a few notes for this lesson, but before we go on to those, let's first take a look at this listening practice, which is a girl's diary entry written to herself. 오늘은 오랜만에 친구들을 만났다. Today, for the first time in a while, I met my friends. 너무 많이 먹어서 그런지 아직도 배가 부르다. Maybe because we ate so much, or too much, I'm still full. 다들 예쁘게 하고 올 거라고 해서 because everyone said they're going to dress pretty, so everyone said they're going to dress up. 나도 원피스를 입고 갔다. So I also wore a one-piece dress. 수다도 많이 떨었는데 we also talked a lot. 시간이 부족했다. But there wasn't enough time. 그래서 다음 달에 한 번 더 모이자고 해야겠다. So next month, we should meet up again. Literally, 한 번 더 is one more time.
오늘은 오랜만에 친구들을 만났다. 너무 많이 먹어서 그런지 아직도 배가 부르다. 다들 예쁘게 하고 올 거라고 해서 나도 원피스를 입고 갔다. 수다도 많이 떨었는데 시간이 부족했다. 그래서 다음 달에 한 번 더 모이자고 해야겠다.
Before we go on to our notes for this lesson, try to solve these quick quiz questions on your own. You can pause the video here and then unpause it when you're ready for the answers. Here are the answers. The first one is true. 나 should be used instead of 저 to say I or me whenever using the plain form. And the next one is also true. Plain form should be used when writing journals, essays, and news articles. Next, let's conjugate the following verbs to the plain form. 가다 becomes 간다, 맵다 becomes 맵다, 없다 becomes 없다, 믿다 becomes 믿는다, and 덥다 becomes 덥다. Now, to be a bit technical, the complete plain form can also include 3 other forms which together are used often in quoting forms. These 3 forms are for making suggestions, the 자 ending, commands, the 으라 or 라 ending, and questions, the 냐 ending. However, you can simply memorize the word plain form as this one form we covered in this lesson, because this is what it's most often used to mean. While the form for making suggestions, the 자 ending, as well as questions, the 냐 ending, are commonly used in casual speech, the form for making commands, 으라 or 라, is an older form and is not used in regular speech by itself. Again, to keep things simple, you can memorize that the plain form is the one form that we covered in this lesson, which ends in 다. Now, this 다 form is technically a part of 해라체. So in this lesson, we learned about the plain form, and in the next lesson, we're going to talk more about how you can talk to yourself using the plain form. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next lesson. 그럼 다음에 또 봐!